Welcome to the Life Engineering Podcast. My name is Gabriela, former chemical engineer, relationship coach, and author. In each episode, we'll uncover the wisdom, strategies, and tools to help you build thriving relationships and purpose-driven careers. My wish is that something shared in this space touches your heart, brings clarity, or gently guides you toward what you need most in your life right now. Thank you for being here. Let's begin now. What if the story you've been living isn't the one you were meant to tell? What if the narrative running your life, the one shaped by fear, old beliefs, or even limitations, is just one version of your truth and not the final draft? Welcome everyone to the Life Engineering Podcast, where we explore what it really takes to design a life of no regrets, a life of meaning, growth, and alignment from the inside out. And today, we're not just talking about transformation, we're talking about authorship, about reclaiming the pen and rewriting the narrative that defines who we are and what's possible for us. And of course, I couldn't think of a better guest for this conversation than Joanna Horton McPherson. Welcome, Joanna.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be with you, Gabriela.
So, for those of you who don't know, Joanna is a speaking coach, a seasoned educator, and a truth teller whose work weaves together voice, vision, and purpose. From the Harvard Graduate School of Education to the hills of Costa Rica, where she co-founded the Madre Tierra Foundation. Oh, I can say that properly. Joanna is someone who knows what it means to turn lived experience into power and story into legacy. I'm thrilled to have you here, Joanna, and I want to start asking you, you have such a rich and fascinating path from teacher and advocacy to coaching and public speaking. But underneath all of that, it feels like your true work is helping people come home to themselves. So please tell us, what first woke you up to the power of story as a force of healing, as a force of growth and personal transformation?
Great question. The power of story, I think when you say that, I think of our stories and that we operate mostly in the stories we tell ourselves are true. I think maybe we should start with why I know about the stories I tell myself. Back when I was 13 years old, I discovered theater, the stage, plays. And this isn't part of the bio you read, but it's a big part of my path. Sometimes the things we fall into, not because we planned on it, but because they draw us in, contain so much of our truth. So at that young age, when I was 13, what people don't know is the struggle that I came through as a young person to value myself. I had a really, I joke, my friend group could have been called the Girls with Low Self-Esteem Club. It's just not a lot of self-worth. And you look at statistics now, girls start to pull their hands into their sleeves around age 12 and they want to get small and they don't want to talk. I know a lot about that. That's how my journey started, was being small in myself, not feeling confident in doing things my own way, looking to others, looking to authority to tell me what to do, not trusting my own judgment. So this story repeated through decades as an adult. But the first time I was realized, to your question, the power of story was when I was 13 and I saw people who were feeling very differently about themselves, glowing on stage, open, comfortable with who they were, feeling worthy of being seen by the world, the proverbial world, the audience. And it was magical. I'm like, how did they do that? What did they have in them that I don't have in me? And so I was curious, and I would come up to the stage, do plays, and playing a character is one thing, but really you're yourself. You are showing up in all of you in the moment. And I would always feel like I was faking it, like I was pretending, and I didn't feel right. So I kept training for decades, many teachers, how to feel authentic on stage. And I learned a lot during that time, and it healed me, along with learning to meditate, becoming someone who worked with energy in myself, healing myself. And now I get to bring that to others, because those are the practices that changed my life.
Wow. Feels like it became the actress in you, almost your alter ego, that allowed you to then embody that yourself.
I would actually say that I was living as the alter ego in the real world, and I was my true self on stage.
Ooh.
Because when you're in the spot and everyone's looking at you to tell, the actor's job is, by the way, not to pretend. The actor's job is to live an experience truly.
But this is not, we believe the opposite, actually.
Right.
You have
So,
to pretend.
yeah, many times over my life, people would say, "Oh, you're an actor. Are you pretending right now?" And I would have to explain to them, I specialized in this technique. I studied in a conservatory and went through the whole path, and then ultimately taught the emotional honesty acting technique, which is like a cousin to the method acting. Lee Strasberg founded method acting, which people know from Hollywood, and Sanford Meisner. They studied together. They were colleagues back in the 50s.
So what's the difference between the two?
In method acting, that's a good question. You're using real life circumstances that have happened to you to call up on command, like, Daniel Day-Lewis. I'm improvising here. I don't know if this is a real example, but he would do something like think of a traumatic time when he had a, chaotic, troubled mind, and he would go back to that place and live there for the character. And in method acting, you have to inhabit that world for the duration of the character's life, which is your shoot or your production. And so you're living in that. There's a lot of, if you don't know that technique, it works for the purposes of acting because it's very real, but it does something to the actor, which can be very difficult to come out and come back into your life. Some method actors like to be called their character's name, for example, because they don't want to come back to their normal identity. They want to be called the character to live in that character's world. Okay, so Sanford Meisner's emotional honesty technique leverages the truth about the brain, which is that the brain cannot perceive the difference between what is perceived to be true and what's true. So in Sanford Meisner's technique, you unilaterally do not revisit things from your own past. You use the imagination to come up with scenarios that could be true, that haven't actually happened, and you rehearse all of this in your actor's toolkit for several years. The actor studies from 0 to 100, all of the tools that complete this picture I'm describing, where you can live in a character's world, the same as Daniel Day-Lewis does, but in a totally different approach through imagined difficult, pain. So the actor prepares rage, fear, arousal, joy, and what's the other one? Rage, fear, arousal, joy, and grief, of course. So this is like the primary colors of emotion, and you learn which preparations you'll do in your imaginary life, which your brain perceives as real in the moment on stage, to live out an experience. So where does that come to storytelling and healing? Through learning how to go up on stage and live something truthfully, live out a moment in a scene. I had to rely on one thing that I, in the rest of the world, had trouble relying on, and that's myself. My instincts. You can't land and ride on anything in the moment when your camera's on you, when it's your scene and it's your monologue and your lines. There's nothing to lean on but yourself to show up fully. So you must become very comfortable with all the places that you're not usually willing to visit, to uncover, the little places we don't want to visit in ourselves, or the anxiety or the fear that you're not enough, or the feeling of pretending, being like a fake. All of that comes up in that moment, because you can't act from a place of part way. You have to do the whole thing. You have to be fully in your body. So it's a process of burning off for me. It was surfacing all these anxieties, all the self-worth, self-doubt that I would contact through my training. And then I had to become a meditator in real life to sustain what would come up for me. about my self-doubt. So I learned a lot, like I don't trust myself. That's hard to know. So then it's like, okay, what am I going to do about that? I fell into a Buddhist community and studied in months-long retreats all over the world for several years through my acting career to work with myself off stage. I could go on and tell you stories about that, but when it comes to when you talk about leaving a legacy, I've come for myself into a place where my practices help me work with what I don't typically want to see. And then you're like, well, what's that for? You know, what it feels like, okay, I can fulfill more in my life. I feel better about myself, but it doesn't stop there. I work with people. And so now I'm going to the end of life, looking like reverse engineering backward from the end of our lives. We want to look back at where we are now and say, how can I make the most of my ability to heal, my ability to be present with myself? I can change my stories about myself. Now my work is about helping other women leaders determine what they're going to do with their voice to influence other people and help others find themselves, find their truth, make a difference.
Wow. So first of all, the first thing that came to my mind when you were sharing this is what a beautiful opportunity to bring the stories, the narratives that no longer serve you to the surface so you can actually heal them. And when you actually lean into that and embrace that fully, it turns into such a huge opportunity that will open more light into your life. So that itself feels like what a better way to face what you need to bring that to the surface than by actually doing what you love to do, which in your case was acting. I think for me as a coach, as an entrepreneur, that came when I was coaching other people. That also will bring up, my own insecurities, and I would see that as the opportunity. I would tell people, you just go and serve. And whatever shows up, that's the opportunity for you to clear once the session is over, obviously. And I love that obviously you teach others to do what you were able to master for yourself. So, how do you begin guiding someone through the process of questioning and rewriting their narratives?
I love that. Yes, I do coach people off stage now in what I call the real world, bringing the stage work of being present. It's something we're all doing all of the time. I mean, the stage is proverbial at this point. The stage is this. This is a stage.
Our lives. That's right.
Exactly. They're our lives. I mean, I would love to hear your answers to your same question because we both coach people. I view my role as to stay committed to my practice of seeing myself honestly, so I can be a clear enough mirror for my clients, so that my stuff doesn't come up with them. Because I've coached people for a long time, and I know both ways, and I get into stuff that's really not about them when my stuff comes up in the coaching space. So I feel my job, just like stage, is to prepare myself to be a clear enough channel for them to see themselves honestly. How that starts, I mean, Gabriela, the first thing is making sure someone's really clear on what I do and what I don't do before we begin, so that they understand that by engaging me, they've that choice to work with me, to go in, to turn the gaze inward and become honest and feel and call things up, is the biggest transformation they're going to make. It's just the choice to do that. It's such a powerful shift. So I feel my job on the front end is to explain, I don't have the answers. You have them, but we have our attention on so many other things that we tend to miss the point. So if you're looking to discover something that you don't yet know how to do, this is your time. I just talking with a woman the other day who's been talking about becoming a client, but she sees the cliff and she kept saying, I'm too scared. This is scary. I like my life. I don't want to change. Is this going to affect my marriage? Is this going to affect my this, that, and the other? And, there's, yes, The answer is yes, of course. Of course it's going to affect everything. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. My job is to ask you how brave you are, because what we know about going big is that you become unconditional about what your tolerance for joy, love, connection, fulfilling your potential to serve. If you truly are committed to those things, there's nothing that won't be truly up for revision. But if your goal is to keep things the way they are, this isn't for you. This isn't for you. So it's sort of like, what's your appetite for adventure and becoming expanded, fully expressed in yourself? So I feel my job, again, is to really be clear, like this path demands things that most of us want to find in ourselves, which is becoming an independent thinker, thinking for yourself. Entrepreneurs know a lot about this, but we get into the soup when we forget we've got to center on doing things our way, doing the research, understanding best practices and centering on those for yourself and finding out your way of doing it, becoming brave, knowing you can stand anything that's handed to you, and having a vision that matters. So you know what you're going toward and that your heart is in it. Because if any of those things are less than clear, it's just not going to work. So once we start, it's all kind of easy from there. It's just showing up at that point with the work that I give them.
So you shared that your client was what was holding her back, perhaps, was the fear that this will affect
Yes.
her relationship. What would my husband say? I like that we usually do this with clients. We ask them, imagine that you actually create what you want. And now what's the worst that can happen, right? What would your family say? What would your children say? Your partners say? Your friends? So how do you overcome that fear? How do you help your clients overcome those fears? Or maybe these are not the common threads. What are the common threads that your clients, the stories in their stories that are holding them back? What are the most common limiting stories that you find you first have to deal with before you can even get to the work itself?
Such a good question. Sometimes in the process of meeting a potential client, I feel like I need 4 conversations to get them to understand what the work is, because I will say they, but I include myself in this, because every time I think I have it figured out, I fall off a cliff. So I'm still learning myself.
That's actually so important to say, that we are also we are like our own clients.
Oh, yes. Oh,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, we have to, like, a coach isn't worth a whole lot to me if they're not doing the work they put me through first,
Yeah.
So that's my work, right? To have us understand the difference between being in dialogue with our stories about ourselves versus being in dialogue with meeting oneself truly. Because the fears usually are connected to the stories we have. And you started this podcast off by talking about being the author of your life.
That's right.
There's a lot of comfort in staying in stasis because you have the same day every day. Things don't change a lot. And we're in a pastel world where it's fine, and it's all fine. So to turn the volume up and get brilliant color and bring more energy will violate some of those frameworks to create something bigger and better. But it will cause change. And change for a lot of us is painful because we don't want to change. When we would change our relationship to change and say, this is why vision is so important. Object fixation is real. What you put your attention on, people who do manifestation work are going to start tuning into this fast. When you keep your vision on what you're doing it for and what you really want in your heart, change will happen on its own. And our relationship to change is like the water flowing rather than moving boulders. And if object fixation is on keeping things the same, our stories, my life is good, I am good, change is going to be hard. And frankly, those people don't work with me. Maybe it's not the right time, but to answer your question, the real job is for me to help them meet themselves instead of and meet themselves inside of the story. So like you said, what is it you're truly afraid of? What is the worst thing that can happen? That really is the question, because it bypasses the fear to truth. And once you contact what's true, is that, oh, I'm way stronger than I forgot how strong I am. I forgot there's a me in here that wants to breathe. And I have songs in my heart that I have to sing. I cannot die with these songs in here. And to hear them and to be like, what is it that I'm not willing to live right now that wants to be lived out through my life? Now we're talking. Now we've got something. Now we build a vision. And it's sort of a creative process. It's uncertain, it's mysterious, it brings energy, it gets you up out of bed in the morning. I mean, this is a life we all want to live, but it takes the capacity to become way braver, to become a brave being.
I love two things that you mentioned. One is you call it truth. I usually name it clarity. I said the power of clarity is so strong, because when you're able to peel the layers and understand what is under your fear, like you said, that clarity allows you to filter everything else. Like you said, the brain has the power of focusing on one thing. And we all know this, right? That when you're pregnant, you only see pregnant women. So when you're super clear about what the true issue is, because we usually solve the wrong problem, but when we get clear about what the real problem is, then we filter any other information and we're able to actually overcome that. So I so resonate that this is really the first step. And I also, and I know I feel that for myself quite often, actually, I can see the two parts of me. I can see my soul being curious and wanting to impact and wanting to serve and explore and create and grow. And then I can see my ego or my negative side wanting to just crawl under the bed and be left alone.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm not trying to eradicate that part of myself. I acknowledge it, but I know that this is the part, the human side of me, that is limited. And I also know that is my soul that is here to live an experience and to live a life of no regrets. So if my intention is truly to live that life of no regrets, I actually need to be very mindful, who do I listen to? Because if I listen, and I can, once I acknowledge both, I get to choose who do I listen. If I listen to the limited part of me, then game over, right? But if I listen to my soul and then act from that place, despite the other one being there, then I'm moving forward towards that expansion and service and impact and creation. And I think that many times people feel guilty that, or what's wrong with me? Why do I have that other voice that wants to, crawl under the bed? And I like to give it its place, to give myself permission to have it, but choose who do I listen to. How do you do that work with your clients?
When you say that work, what is the work you're talking about? Having permission
To be in complete choice, where you actually consciously choose to live your truth. You call it your truth.
How do I bring them to the point of choice? Is that what you're saying? To consciously choose? Well,
the choice is our clients, right? It's the other person, but how do we help them become more free?
Right. I have a method specific to this is where coaches have their unique signatures, right?
That's
so
right.
Mine is a combination of my background in education and learning, the learning world, and what it means to be a learner, learning environments, learning conversations, learning mindset, and then also my path in self-awareness through meditation and working on stage. So in my world of education, I studied with this well-known pedagogical, she's a theorist in education, named Eleanor Duckworth. And she has a method called critical exploration, which is where a learner follows their spark of interest in all. And so she talks about school design, and I have 2 young children. So I've looked for a school that really gets this philosophy, if not using the same words in spirit. I coach people with critical exploration. And so for my clients, they have a spark of curiosity in the dialogue they're having in their life with themselves about what they want. Usually it shows up in your personal life first. People come to me to learn how to speak, but when we close the door and we sit down and they've chosen this space and this time and this work, the inner work surfaces first, the inner stuff, their relationships, their family, their kids, their, and when we design from the inside out, I simply ask them to tell me what's happening. And I give them work to get more insights and learn and become curious and research more and go deeper and deeper and understanding where's the root of the question here. Because what we know about questions is when you listen and tune into this question, like, how can I set good boundaries with my blank person? There's something underneath it, usually. Like, I don't know how to set boundaries. So then the question is, what do I know about boundaries? And then we learn about where this comes from. And then we get to the point of going back into timeline. Listen, the past is gone. It doesn't matter, except that there's one issue, and that's that humans are emotional beings. And our emotions live in the unconscious. And the subconscious mind has recorded everything that happened to us from the beginning of time without missing a beat. But our conscious mind only has access to whatever we're up to that we put our attention on. So my job is to help them become aware of what the unconscious emotional system needs them to learn consciously. So if you have your goals out here that are conscious and you have the world you've actually lived, now our job is to make more of the wisdom that you've gotten, the lessons you had to learn, the feelings you actually have, not the life you wish you, not who you wish you are and who you think you are, but who are you really? And starting to design from a conscious place. And I know that sounds very broad, but that is my approach. So what it looks like in sessions is I ask questions and I give them exercises. And every time we meet, and even between sessions, I'll have them ping me and give me updates. I want to know what your research is telling you about you, what's up, what's not up, what you still haven't figured out, what you did figure out. And many times they'll bring something to me. Like, I learned all of this when I did this homework. I wrote a letter to my mother and I realized blank, blank, and blank. And then I'm like, so what does that mean to you today? And then they'll say, oh, I just realized I'm doing this with my daughter. And then, and then we just peel back, and then things become conscious, and, it gives me goosebumps. This is how change happens. This is how change happens. I have a change container. It's like this space we come in is for the purpose of letting everything be up for revision in service of the greater goal that we have. So we're just sort of sitting in the center of like, I'm going to ask, I'm going to call on my guidance. I'm going to figure out what I'm missing. And then when it lines up and it becomes conscious, it's getting more and more connected to where we want to go.
I love this. I love that you send your clients on a self-research journey. I absolutely love that analogy, and that you allow them to actually no, that's not the right word. You allow them to see what's holding them back and what's the narrative that no longer serves them. Because, like you said, many times those narratives are even not theirs. They borrowed them from their parents or,
Yes.
or a family member. Some of them are old, generational.
Oh my gosh. Today I have a chapter due to my editor on exactly this, because my book, it's called, And Now You Must Mean It. It's the guide for the woman leader on the inner journey of becoming a voice, an authentic voice. I'm working on the title here, but the point of my chapter is on that we are from our ancestral lineage, matrilineal. Like, women do it differently. Women, we tend to think of the whole. I know I'm generalizing and I am a feminist, but I'm saying this because I've got to get to the point. Women think about what's good for us in context of what's good for everybody. And so for women leaders, we're always thinking, how can I influence? How can I mentor and help beyond me? That's a unique conversation that we just have because we've come, for better, for worse, in society, we've been taught to accommodate everybody. Like we're the ones receiving and fielding and adapting and making things work. And until we clean up being a garbage can for everyone's BS, that's our maturing, is to decide who we're going to be here for and who we're not. And then once we understand our role of accommodating and adjusting for people is actually in service of what the next generation wants to learn from us. So now being accommodating becomes being a wisdom holder that will serve others through our voice. Where did this go with the narratives? Yes. So we inherit from our mothers what their work was and how they accommodated others and how they became a voice or didn't. So I really resonate with what you said about narratives not being ours. That's the work of a lifetime. Very personally, I am sober. I became someone who had to not drink because I realized that as a mother of a daughter, I became conscious of what my children will inherit from me. And whether it's bad habits, addictions, or old stories, limiting beliefs, I want her to inherit from me cleaned up stories so she can create her own story. So I've done the work in my lifetime, and this is something I talk about in my book and with my clients, of you're an ancestor to someone. Even if you're not a mother, there are people around you you're mentoring. Whether you want to be an example to them or not, you are. So what do we want to be an example of? And that's it's to be the legacy leaving part of the conversation.
Well, first of all, congratulations on your book. This is really exciting.
Thank you.
You must be thrilled. And I love the topic. I love the title. As you were talking, it came to me, I was thinking about feminine energy because you were talking about women. I do believe that we as women, we are the receivers of energy, usually from the male energy. But we get to choose. I think the negative polarity of that being the receiver, maybe in the past that it was made out of no choice. There was no much freedom. So I'll receive whatever I'm given, and then I'll use it to feed everybody else. And now the way that I perceive what you were sharing is the more aligned side of that feminine energy is that I get to choose who do I receive from and what I let into my container. And I also get to choose how I use that to impact and serve others, because we are that container that channels energy so we can manifest, right? And create. But I get to choose, who do I let into my container? Who do I receive from? And how do I use that? So on its own, the process of receiving and giving to others is beautiful, as long as it's coming from that positive polarity, from that place of choice and empowerment, and not the disempowered negative side of it. Does it make sense?
Oh, yes. I love what you're saying. My clients talk about this a lot with me because at some point, and especially when we even talked about the journey of becoming a speaker, and whether it's literally going on stage to be a speaker or being sort of like the metaphor and analogy of a speaker, a leader in some way in a community, we start to wonder, when we do things our way and create and find out what message we truly have in our heart that we can guide others with who are coming up, this conversation starts to come up. Well, who's it's all been done before. Who's going to listen to me? And I will say, speaking of my book, this book has been in the work in some form for more than 10 years. So I appreciate the congratulations, but also like my frame of reference is like, it's taken me so long to get ready to be able to do this in myself, to be able to put the pen and have the questions about everything I'm about to say behind me now, because I'm here to now serve at the level that I know I want to, and I'm 100% clear about that. This is about knowing that I am not for everyone. And this is the divine feminine energy said, choose who we receive from. Well, it goes the other
Yeah.
way too. Who we are speaking to. Because when people say, who cares? Like, who's going to care about what I say? I'm here to be like, well, there are a lot of people who don't, and they're not going to care. And they will have, because we fear criticism. We fear being invalidated by blah, 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 blah. But that's because we're focused in the wrong people. They're not ready. They're not here they're not here to talk about what we're here to talk about. So then we get to say, but who is? Because there are a lot of those people who have been waiting for us, who need us to be holding this conversation about becoming and doing the work. So then you get to say, okay, I'm not for everyone, but I am for some. And I'm talking to them. That's the whole thing. This is 100% of your audience now. So we can graduate from needing anyone to validate our message. Now we just get to deliver it and find out what we need to say.
I'm so glad you said that. I think I needed to hear those words because these days I'm preparing a presentation for a conference, a tech conference. I'm going to be talking about work-life balance for driven, busy people, stressful careers. And sometimes I find myself thinking, but what if some people don't resonate with that? But I think that those words were meant for me.
Yeah, we're guided here. I know I'm guided.
Absolutely. I
Yes,
really
and you're
appreciate
right.
it.
There are people who that's not for. And so the role of the speaker is to know that and to go beyond that to the next thing, which is what? Okay, who am I speaking to?
Yeah.
The rest we put aside. Now you get to focus on your real message, knowing there are some young Gabrielas whose lives are about to be changed.
Yeah.
And that's whose hearts you're going to touch.
Wow. Joanna, this conversation has been such a gift. I ask you questions, but I'm sure there's something. Is there anything you want to share? Something within your heart that you feel like you don't want to end this conversation without sharing? What's in your heart? What would you like to tell people before we end?
Find out what matters to you. That's the beginning, the middle, and the end of the story, is finding out what matters to you, what you love, who you love, and centering on that is the most worthwhile work we can do. For me, it's my family and it's myself and the people who are in my circle, which is small. That's what my life's about. And I get to share that with the people beyond and beyond and beyond and connect with them and connect with them. But when you start small and find out what your heart, it's all about love. So centering on that that's the whole game.
Thank you. Your words carrying a lot of clarity and compassion and inspiration, but also a lot of sense of possibility. I love it. And freedom. Can you tell us where people can find you and in the future your book?
Yes, definitely. There will be pre-orders, but not for several months. So get on my newsletter, because I like to share. I view my newsletter as like a campfire, and you can gather around and get warm and get in some conversations. I'm building a community right now. It's going to be a twice monthly workshop, your talk, drop-in virtual meeting to connect with other women on any level of journey of becoming a speaker or becoming someone who wishes to be one. We work together, we close the door, and we dive into what is happening and learn. So if you'd like to join that, the best way is to just visit my website, JoannaHortonMcPherson.com. And that's the best way.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, Joanna, and for reminding us that our stories are not fixed. They're alive, they evolve, and they're ours to reclaim. All right. And to you, dear listeners, thank you for taking the time to be here with us today. If you're an author, if you are dreaming to be a speaker, get in touch with Joanna, join her community. and let's create a life of no regrets. Until next time, keep engineering a life you love. Bye for now.